Good morning and welcome back. I'm Dr. Clarence Martin, and today I want to start by asking you something that might sound a little strange. I want you to think about your kitchen. Right now, wherever you are, I want you to picture that kitchen counter, those cabinets, that spice rack, or that little drawer you have tucked away near the stove. Because somewhere in that kitchen, there is a powder that has been sitting within arm's reach of you, possibly for years. And every single morning, you walk right past it. You walk past it, and you pour your coffee, and you either load that coffee up with sugary creamers and artificial sweeteners that are quietly working against your body, or you drink it plain and you miss one of the single most powerful health opportunities your morning routine has to offer. I need you to hear me when I say this. What I'm about to share with you today is not a trend. It is not something I found on a late-night infomercial. This is backed by decades of legitimate medical research published in journals that physicians like me read and respect. And the reason I want to bring this to you, specifically to the seniors in this community, is because the people who stand to gain the most from this information are people over the age of 55. People who are already doing the work, already making the effort to protect their health, but who may be missing this one tiny, almost embarrassingly simple addition to a ritual they already do every single day. And here is what makes this so remarkable. You don't have to change your lifestyle. You don't have to buy an expensive supplement. You don't have to make a new appointment. You just have to reach a little further into that cabinet tomorrow morning. The science behind what I'm about to tell you is, and I mean this genuinely, jaw-dropping. It is going to permanently change the way you think about your morning coffee and your morning routine. And once you understand what is actually happening inside your body when these two things are combined, I believe you are never going to start your day without them together again. So stay with me. Let's get into this. The powder is cinnamon. Now, before you smile and think, "Oh, Dr. Martin, I know about cinnamon," I need you to pump the brakes. Because I promise you that what most people know about cinnamon and what the science actually says about cinnamon are two entirely different conversations. Most people think of cinnamon as a flavor, something you sprinkle on oatmeal, something that makes your house smell like the holidays. And yes, it does those things. But calling cinnamon a flavor is like calling a surgeon a person who uses knives. It is technically accurate and almost completely misses the point. Cinnamon is medicine. It is one of the most medically potent natural substances that has ever been studied. And I am saying that as a physician who has spent the better part of 3 decades looking at how small daily habits create massive, compounding changes in a person's long-term health. Cinnamon has been used medicinally for over 4,000 years. Ancient Egyptian physicians used it. It appears in Chinese medicinal texts going back millennia. But we are not relying on ancient history here. We have modern, rigorous, peer-reviewed science, and that science is telling us something remarkable. Now here is where it gets really exciting, because we are not just talking about cinnamon in isolation. We are talking about what happens when cinnamon meets coffee. Because coffee, all on its own, is already one of the most studied and legitimately beneficial beverages in the world. It contains compounds called chlorogenic acids, which are powerful antioxidants. It has been shown to have protective effects on the liver, the brain, and the cardiovascular system. So coffee is already doing work for you. But when you add cinnamon to coffee, something happens that scientists call a synergistic effect. That means the two things together produce a result that is greater than what either one of them could produce alone. They amplify each other. They enhance each other's bioavailability, which simply means that your body is able to absorb and use the beneficial compounds more effectively when they are combined. What you are creating in that cup, when you do this correctly, is not just a morning beverage. You are creating a functional health tool. And I am going to walk you through exactly what it is doing inside your body, system by system, because you deserve to understand this. Let's start with blood sugar, because this is where the story gets truly remarkable, and this is the benefit that I believe will hit closest to home for the most people in this audience. I want you to think about your morning for a moment. You wake up. Your blood sugar is at its lowest point of the day because you have been fasting all night while you sleep. You have your coffee, maybe a light breakfast. And then, somewhere between 10 o'clock and noon, it starts. The fogginess. The irritability that creeps up on you for no apparent reason. The craving for something sweet, something starchy. The afternoon energy crash that makes you want to sit down and not get up. Sound familiar? I see this pattern constantly in patients, and it is not a character flaw, and it is not just getting older. It is a blood sugar roller coaster, and it is something we can address. Here is what cinnamon does. Inside the cinnamon bark, there is a compound called cinnamaldehyde. That is the compound responsible for the smell, for the warmth, for everything distinctive about cinnamon. And when cinnamaldehyde enters your bloodstream, it does something extraordinary. It mimics the action of insulin. Stick with me here, because I want to make sure you understand what this means. Insulin is the hormone your pancreas produces to help your cells absorb glucose, which is blood sugar. Think of insulin as a key, and think of your cells as doors. When blood sugar rises after you eat, insulin is supposed to unlock those cellular doors so the glucose can get inside and be used for energy. In many seniors, that locking mechanism becomes less efficient over time. The keys don't work as well, and when glucose can't get into your cells properly, it stays elevated in your bloodstream, and that is when all the problems begin. Cinnamaldehyde essentially acts as a second set of keys. It activates the same receptors that insulin targets, helping your cells open up and absorb glucose more efficiently. The medical term for this is insulin sensitivity, and increasing insulin sensitivity is one of the most important things you can do for your metabolic health as you age, regardless of whether you have diabetes or not. Now here is the research that stopped me in my tracks. A landmark study published in the journal Diabetes Care, one of the most respected publications in metabolic medicine, found that participants who incorporated cinnamon into their daily routine saw reductions in fasting blood glucose levels of up to 29%. 29%. I want you to sit with that number for a moment because that is not a rounding error. That is a clinically significant change produced by a spice that costs a few dollars a jar. The same study showed meaningful reductions in triglycerides and LDL cholesterol as well, but we will come back to heart health in a moment. For those of you who are not diabetic and are thinking this doesn't apply to you, please hear me clearly. Blood sugar dysregulation does not begin with a diabetes diagnosis. It is a spectrum, and the damage it does to your energy, to your mood, to your cognitive clarity, to your long-term vascular health begins decades before any doctor puts a label on it. Stabilizing your blood sugar every morning, before the day even begins, is one of the most profound acts of preventative care you can engage in, and this is exactly what you are doing when you add cinnamon to your coffee. Now let's talk about inflammation, because this is the one that I am most passionate about when it comes to senior health, and I think it is the most underestimated health crisis affecting people in this age group today. Chronic inflammation is the silent driver behind almost every major degenerative condition that steals quality of life as we age. Heart disease, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, arthritis, certain cancers. The research is unambiguous. These conditions are not random acts of biological bad luck. They are, in very large part, the long-term consequences of chronic, low-level inflammation that has been allowed to smolder in the body for years, sometimes decades, unchecked. Here is what is astonishing about cinnamon. Researchers at the USDA Human Nutrition Research Center conducted an analysis of 26 different common spices, measuring their antioxidant and anti-inflammatory capacity. Their finding? Cinnamon ranked number 1. Not turmeric, which has been celebrated for its anti-inflammatory properties and which I have recommended to patients for years. Not garlic, not oregano, not ginger. Cinnamon, at the top of the list. The antioxidant capacity of cinnamon was found to be significantly higher than all of them. Antioxidants, for those who want a quick refresher, are the compounds that neutralize free radicals. Free radicals are unstable molecules that damage your cells, your DNA, and your tissue. They are produced naturally by your body's metabolic processes, but they are also generated by stress, by environmental toxins, by processed foods. When free radicals build up faster than your body can neutralize them, you get what scientists call oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is the biological engine that drives that chronic inflammation I was describing. Now, coffee already contains chlorogenic acids, which are among the most potent naturally occurring antioxidants. But here is where the synergy comes in. When cinnamon's antioxidant compounds combine with coffee's chlorogenic acids in your body, they create what amounts to an anti-inflammatory powerhouse. Each one enhances the effectiveness of the other. Patients who make this part of their routine consistently report that within 2 to 4 weeks, they notice a difference in their joints. The morning stiffness that they had simply accepted as the price of aging begins to ease. Their digestion feels calmer. Their body feels less reactive. And this is not placebo. This is what happens when you systematically reduce the oxidative stress load on your body every single morning before your day has even begun. Your body is an incredibly intelligent system. When you stop bombarding it with inflammatory triggers and start giving it the anti-inflammatory compounds it needs to regulate itself, it knows exactly what to do. Let me shift gears and talk about metabolism and weight management, because I know this is something that many of you are navigating, and I want to give you a genuinely useful framework here rather than empty promises. One of the frustrating realities of aging is that the body's metabolic rate, the speed at which you burn calories, tends to slow down. This is largely due to hormonal shifts and changes in muscle mass. And many seniors find that despite eating roughly the same way they always have, weight begins to accumulate, particularly around the midsection, in a way that feels resistant to everything they try. If this is your experience, you are not imagining it, and you are not failing. You are experiencing a physiological reality. But here is what is also physiologically real. There are natural compounds that can shift this equation, and cinnamon is one of them. Cinnamon activates a process called thermogenesis. Let me explain that word simply. Thermogenesis is the process by which your body generates heat by burning calories. You have 2 types of fat tissue in your body: white fat, which is the kind that stores energy and is associated with metabolic problems when it accumulates in excess, and brown fat, which is metabolically active fat that actually burns calories to produce heat. Cinnamon contains compounds that activate your fat cells, encouraging them to shift toward this calorie-burning, heat-producing mode. It is essentially encouraging your body to run a little hotter, to use a little more energy, even at rest. Now, I want to be completely honest with you because I would rather be honest than popular. Cinnamon is not a magic weight loss pill. No single food is. But here is what it genuinely does, and why it matters as part of a whole picture. By stabilizing your blood sugar in the way I described earlier, cinnamon eliminates the blood sugar roller coaster that drives the cravings, the energy crashes, and the impulse eating that sabotages so many well-intentioned efforts. When your blood glucose is steady throughout the morning, you naturally feel less hungry, less desperate for snacks, less reactive to the sight of food. You make better choices almost effortlessly, not because you are exerting more willpower, but because the biological triggers that undermine willpower are no longer firing as intensely. When you combine the thermogenic effect with the appetite-regulating effect of blood sugar stabilization, what you get is a metabolic environment that is simply more favorable for healthy weight management. That is a real and meaningful benefit, and it happens every morning with a half teaspoon of cinnamon. Now we are getting to the section of this conversation that I take the most seriously, and I need you to give me your full attention, because what I am about to share concerns your brain and your heart. And for seniors, there is no more important territory than this. Let's start with the brain. Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline are, without question, among the greatest fears my patients bring to me, and I understand why. The prospect of losing your memory, your relationships, yourself is terrifying. So when I tell you that there is research suggesting cinnamon may have direct neuroprotective effects, and that neuroprotective means protecting the neurons, the brain cells, from damage, I want you to understand that this is not wishful thinking. This is data. One of the defining hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease, one of the physical signatures that researchers look for in Alzheimer's brains, is the abnormal buildup of a protein called tau. Under normal circumstances, tau protein helps stabilize the structures inside neurons that allow them to communicate. But in Alzheimer's, tau becomes misfolded and begins to aggregate, clumping together in what scientists call neurofibrillary tangles. These tangles disrupt and eventually kill neurons, and this process begins in the brain long before any symptoms of memory loss appear. Researchers have identified compounds within cinnamon, particularly an extract called CEPPT, that have been shown in laboratory studies to inhibit the aggregation of tau protein. That means cinnamon compounds appear to help prevent the clumping that contributes to neuronal destruction. Additionally, cinnamon has been shown to protect the levels of neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers your brain uses to communicate between cells. Protecting neurotransmitter function means protecting the clarity of thought, the emotional regulation, the memory consolidation that you depend on every single day. Now I want to be clear. These are emerging findings. This is not a claim that cinnamon cures Alzheimer's. Research is ongoing and human clinical trials are continuing to develop. But the directional evidence is promising, and the risk of adding Ceylon cinnamon to your coffee is essentially zero. The potential upside, even a marginal neuroprotective effect accumulated over years, is significant. When I weigh those two things against each other as a physician, the answer is clear. Now let's talk about your heart, because the cardiovascular findings from cinnamon research are not emerging. They are well established. Going back to that study in diabetes care and corroborated by multiple subsequent analyses, cinnamon has shown consistent ability to positively influence what I call the big three of cardiovascular risk factors: total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, which is the type associated with arterial plaque buildup, and triglycerides, which are the blood fats linked to heart disease and metabolic syndrome. Here is what makes this finding so striking. The beneficial doses observed in research are modest. Some studies showing meaningful cholesterol and triglyceride reductions use doses as low as 120 milligrams per day. To give you a sense of scale, a quarter teaspoon of cinnamon is approximately 500 to 600 milligrams, so you are potentially seeing cardiovascular benefit from what amounts to a tiny sprinkle. And when you combine this with coffee's own independently documented benefits for heart health, including its role in reducing inflammatory markers associated with cardiovascular disease, you are giving your heart a genuinely meaningful gift every single morning. I also want to spend a moment on something that tends to get less attention in these conversations, and that is the gut. Because gut health, as we understand it now, is not just about digestion. The scientific community has fundamentally shifted its view of the gut microbiome, which is the vast ecosystem of bacteria and other microorganisms living in your digestive tract. We now understand that the composition of your gut microbiome influences your immune function, your mood, your cognitive performance, your susceptibility to inflammation, and your metabolic health. The gut is, quite literally, a second brain. Cinnamon has well-documented antimicrobial and antifungal properties. What this means in practical terms is that cinnamon helps keep the opportunistic bad bacteria, the strains that contribute to inflammation, digestive discomfort, and immune disruption, from overpopulating your gut. It does not wipe out all bacteria indiscriminately the way an antibiotic would. It acts more selectively, creating an environment where the beneficial bacteria your gut depends on can thrive. And coffee, interestingly, contributes here as well. Coffee contains certain compounds that act as prebiotics, meaning they serve as food for your beneficial gut bacteria. So once again, you have a synergistic relationship. The cinnamon creates a healthier gut environment, and the coffee feeds the good bacteria that populate that environment. And then there is something that I love mentioning because patients always find it surprising. There is real, credible research on the effect of cinnamon's aroma on brain function. Studies measuring cognitive performance found that simply smelling cinnamon improved memory, attention span, and visual motor speed, meaning the speed at which your brain responds to visual information. Other research found measurable reductions in anxiety associated with the scent of cinnamon. So your morning cup of cinnamon coffee is not just delivering benefits through what you drink. It is delivering benefits through what you inhale while you hold that warm cup. The ritual itself becomes therapeutic. Now, I need to stop us here for what I consider to be one of the most important parts of this conversation, and I want you to treat this as a genuine medical advisory, because it is one. Not all cinnamon is created equal. And if you take nothing else from this video, please take this. The cinnamon sitting in most spice racks, the cinnamon in most grocery stores, the cinnamon in almost every pre-packaged food product is not the cinnamon I have been describing. It is a variety called cassia cinnamon, sometimes labeled as Chinese cinnamon or Vietnamese cinnamon. Cassia is not inherently harmful in small, occasional amounts. When you have it in a holiday recipe once in a while, you are fine. But cassia cinnamon contains high levels of a compound called coumarin. And coumarin, when consumed regularly at the doses we are recommending for daily health use, is hard on your liver. I need you to hear me on this. Your liver is the primary detoxification organ in your body. It processes everything you eat and drink. And regularly dosing it with high coumarin cassia cinnamon is not something I would recommend to any of my patients, particularly as we age and liver function naturally becomes something we want to protect rather than tax. The cinnamon I am prescribing, and I use that word with intention, for this daily protocol is Ceylon cinnamon. It is sometimes called true cinnamon, Sri Lankan cinnamon, or you will see it on packaging labeled simply as Ceylon. Ceylon cinnamon contains dramatically lower levels of coumarin, so low as to be considered negligible for daily use. It has a slightly more delicate, nuanced flavor than cassia, less harsh, more layered, and it is the variety that the majority of the positive research I have cited today was conducted with or is aligned with. You will find Ceylon cinnamon at health food stores, at well-stocked grocery stores, and very easily online. It is typically a little more expensive than the cassia you find in the standard spice aisle, but the price difference is minimal. And when we are talking about something you are adding to your body every single day, peace of mind and safety are not things you want to compromise on. Make the switch. It is a small thing, and it matters. All right. Now let's talk about exactly how to do this, because the how matters almost as much as the what. The dosage you are looking for is between half a teaspoon and 1 full teaspoon per cup of coffee. I would suggest starting at half a teaspoon if you are new to this and working up to a full teaspoon as your palate adjusts and as you become consistent with the practice. 1 teaspoon is right in the sweet spot for absorbing meaningful amounts of the beneficial compounds without being excessive. Now here is a technique that most people don't know, and I want you to remember this because it genuinely makes a difference. The best way to add cinnamon to your coffee is not to stir it into the finished liquid. Cinnamon does not dissolve well in water. If you stir it into your cup, you are going to get clumping. You are going to get a gritty texture sitting at the bottom, and most importantly, you are going to get significantly less extraction of the beneficial compounds into your drink. What you want to do instead is add the cinnamon directly to your coffee grounds before you brew. If you use a standard drip coffee maker, add your half teaspoon to 1 teaspoon of cinnamon right into the filter with your coffee grounds before you pour the water. If you use a French press, add it to the grounds in the press before you add the hot water. What happens during the brewing process is that the hot water extracts and blends the compounds from both the coffee and the cinnamon simultaneously. You get a fully integrated beverage where the cinnamon flavor is woven throughout rather than sitting on top. And critically, you get superior extraction of the bioactive compounds, meaning more of the good stuff makes it from the spice into your cup and from your cup into your body. That is how you brew for maximum power. And then there is one more thing I want you to hold on to, which is perhaps the most important principle in all of health and medicine. Consistency. This is a marathon, not a sprint. The benefits I have described to you today, the blood sugar stabilization, the anti-inflammatory effects, the metabolic support, the cardiovascular protection, the potential neuroprotective benefits, these do not happen after one cup. They accumulate. They compound over days, weeks, months, and years of daily practice. This is how small habits create massive long-term changes. You do this every day, without skipping, without overthinking it, and your body keeps a running tally that will pay dividends for years to come. So here is what I want to ask of you. I want to issue you a challenge. 30 days. I want you to make this switch tomorrow morning. Get yourself some Ceylon cinnamon, add it to your coffee grounds, and do it every single day for the next 30 days. And I want you to pay attention, because here is what I believe you are going to notice. In the first week, you may notice something subtle with your energy. A little more steadiness to your morning. A little less of that mid-morning crash. By the second and third week, I would not be surprised if you start noticing that you are reaching for fewer snacks, that your appetite feels a little more regulated, that your mood in the mornings is a little cleaner, a little more even. And by the end of 30 days, for many of you, the joint stiffness, the digestive bloating, the afternoon fogginess will have shifted in ways you may not have expected. I am asking you to pay attention to your own body. Keep a simple little note in your phone. How is my energy this morning? How are my cravings today? How are my joints? Because I want you to have your own data. I want you to feel this working, not just hear me tell you it works. Aging does not have to mean declining. That is something I have believed my entire career, and every year the science gives me more evidence to stand on when I say it. The choices you make in the small, quiet moments of your day, the morning rituals, the habits that seem too simple to matter, those are the choices that compound into a profoundly different health trajectory over time. And this one small addition to a cup of coffee you were already going to make anyway, this is one of the simplest and most powerful of those choices. Take care of yourselves. Start adding that cinnamon tomorrow morning, and I will see you in the next video.